Ready? Good morning. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our first Google Hangout as we talk about the issues of the day. I'm Michael Albano. You probably know that, and we are broadcasting this Google Hangout from my office at 280 North Main Street in East Longmeadow, the Reminder Building. I'm delighted to have you here. We're doing this Google Hangout because we had a press conference scheduled for Tuesday at 11 o'clock regarding Mill Street. And guess what? Nobody showed up. None of the Main Street media showed up, and we took it upon ourselves to try and get this message out via an alternative means. And that's why we're going live here for this Google Hangout and talk about the relocation of the Western Massachusetts Alcohol Correctional Center to Mill Street in Springfield. As you probably know, I've been opposed to this going back to 2014 when the sheriff tried to move the Howard Street facility to the north end to Wasson Avenue. And we worked with the citizens of the neighborhood and fought that, and eventually the sheriff withdrew. And the reason I was against it was because as mayor, I invested $60 million into that neighborhood. We built the new Chestnut Accelerated Middle School. We developed beautiful soccer fields there, put massive money into renovations to Kennefic Park. The city administration was helpful on building the Benjamin Ramos Health Center. So we really transformed that neighborhood. And to put a correctional center, make no mistake about this, this is a jail. It's not a group home. It's not a rehab center. It's a jail. These people who are sentenced are actually committed. And that would have changed the dynamic of that neighborhood for many years to come. So the Main Street media has decided not to cover my version of this, my opinion on this, my position on this issue, for whatever reason. And that'll be the subject of another Google Hangout down the road a little bit. So let's talk about Mill Street here. I sent this press release out, and this is the actual press release that I sent that they didn't cover. And we'll talk a little bit about it point by point. So I criticized the proposed relocation of the Western Mass Correctional Alcohol Center to Mill Street. And I began this opposition in 2014 because, in my view, this correctional center should be built at the Ludlow complex and should be expanded to provide additional services. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. But for the record, the Mill Street site, this site, was rejected by the Division of Capital Asset Management and Maintenance. It's called DCAM. Rejected by DCAM twice in 2014 and once again in 2015. And I said in this release that the Main Street media decided not to cover, if Mill Street was twice a bad idea in 2014 and again in 2015, it's highly unlikely it's a good idea in 2016. So let's just back up a little bit, because a few years ago, Sheriff Ash sent out for two emergency proposals for Mill Street, which were rejected. One in April of 2014, another on October 22nd, which was withdrawn by the developer. The sheriff stated, "We were devastated to leave Howard Street, but we really wanted Mill Street." The Mill Street property developer, Lyman Taylor Realty, withdrew its proposal for the site, citing financial reasons, meaning it was too expensive for the private developer to build on that site. In April of 2015, the state received two proposals, Wasson Avenue site and Mill Street again. By the way, the owner of Mill Street at that time was a deputy sheriff. What a small world. What a very, very small world. But that's something, of course, you didn't read about in the mainstream media or hear about it. So, sheriff went on to say, it ends up that Wasson Avenue prevailed. The key reasons are that it represents a $2.6 million savings over the course of 10 years, and it's a new facility in Springfield. So, the lesson learned here, building new will save the taxpayers money if the next sheriff wants to go that route, which I don't. So the press release, which the mainstream media did not cover, So now we have a 3-time rejected site, again under consideration. The site makes no sense financially. It makes no sense, more importantly, for the neighborhood, which is a nice neighborhood. A lot of beautiful historic homes in that neighborhood. In fact, Mill Street is abutted on both sides, to the left and to the right as you're looking at it, by beautiful historic homes. Residence A, single family. They are gorgeous and have the potential to be gorgeous. And why you would put a jail, and this is a jail, in between 2 residential homes is beyond me. Just think about that. If it went to Longmeadow or West Springfield or East Longmeadow, somebody proposing putting a jail in between 2 residential homes. Doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So people have said to me, what do you know about construction? What do you know about developments? Well, as you know, I'm the former mayor of Springfield, and I built or renovated, oversaw the construction of 10 public schools. I oversaw the construction of the Basketball Hall of Fame and the Richard E. Neal Maintenance Building on Tapley Street. Let me just talk a little bit about that, because I have had extensive history experience with construction. This is a 1970s building, and the sheriff wants to retrofit this building at a huge cost to the taxpayers for a 1970 program. This is the wrong program at the wrong time at the wrong location. We just lost 3 kids, 3 young people in Westfield to this opioid crisis, overdoses. Another 7 just last week in Hampden County that we know of overdosed, but were saved because of the use of Narcan. This is the public health crisis of our generation. And worrying about Wasson Avenue or Mill Street is really tackling the wrong issue at the wrong time. We should be developing an action plan, and there's none yet in Hampden County, none yet, to fight this opioid epidemic. And as sheriff, that is one of the things I'm going to do. It'll be my primary mission of saving lives. Let's get back to the neighborhood now, the Maple High 6 Corners neighborhood, which is a great neighborhood. And I met with the residents there, and we talked about this correctional center that's being proposed. By the way, the sheriff said that this program, this jail program, this correctional center, is an integral part of the community. Integral, essential. I disagree. As a former mayor, let me tell you what an integral part of a community is. Mass Mutual is an integral part of a community. And I don't think anybody in the world would talk about putting a correctional center across the street from Mass Mutual. I know the folks at Mass Mutual wouldn't be too pleased about that. Springfield Technical Community College is an integral part of the community. They provide quality education and really are an economic development stimulus for the entire region. That's an integral part of the community. Holyoke Community College is an integral part of that city for the same reason. So I do not view this as an integral part of the community. It's important, but it's not integral. And I don't believe it should be located on Mill Street. But getting back to the neighborhood, beautiful neighborhood. And I don't believe any competent city planner would recommend a correctional center at that site as the highest and best land use. I think we can do a lot better. In 2015, I submitted a letter to DCAM and asked them to suspend all activity relative to this request for proposals for the Western Mass Alcohol Correctional Center until such time as the pending litigation in Hampden County Superior Court is resolved and the issue of the so-called Dover Amendment is clarified by judicial review relative to the siting of a correctional center in a community. Now, for those of you who don't know what the Dover Act is, the Dover Act allows for educational programming to be exempt from zoning regulations and laws. That means that the group homes that you see are educational programs. Now, I lived across the street when I was mayor on Florentine Gardens. There was a group home for those who had challenges, basically right across the street from my home. That's a group home. There were 8 people living there who had disabilities and were working to meet those challenges, go to work every day, and live a normal, productive life. And we had no issues whatsoever. That's a group home. Where I live in Long Meadow now, there's a group home right across the street. Same type of situation. That's the definition of a group home under the Dover Amendment. Not a house of correction. Not a facility where people are committed and confined. Not a facility where there's going to be barbed wire at the top of the building. That's not a group home. That's not a group home. So I want to talk about that because if this goes to Mill Street, by the way, it'll be there for the next 50 years. If you look at the Howard Street, it was there for all that time until finally MGM came in and took over the property. Now here's the other thing. This is quite amazing here. You now have a $1 billion economic development project, the MGM Casino. 1 billion with a B. Mill Street is about 1/3 of a mile from that proposal, from that plan, from that project. Why anybody would put a correctional center 1/3 of a mile from the biggest economic development project in the history of this of Springfield and in the history of Western Massachusetts is beyond me. So, 2,500 people working there, according to MGM. How about putting some market rate condominiums on Mill Street? That would transform that neighborhood. It would assist, and it is the right land use as opposed to putting a correctional center. So we're going to fight this, and this is another thing that the mainstream media won't write about or won't televise or won't put on radio. It's going to be challenged next week in court. Sean Allen, the lawyer who challenged the Wasson Avenue, who still has that case pending because we want answers relative to the Dover Act, will be filing on behalf of the residents and the abutters in Superior Court to get a temporary restraining order to halt the construction. The other part of this is, which is really disturbing to me as a former mayor, is the lease was signed, negotiated and signed before there was a community meeting, before a neighborhood meeting. Apparently the sheriff learned his lesson from Wasson Avenue when he was in the middle of negotiations when the neighborhood came alive and protested and opposed that site. So now DCAM goes and signs a lease with somebody, a developer, out-of-state developer, I might add. And then they go to the neighborhood and say, this is how it's going to be. This is what it's going to be. Well, we're going to challenge that. We are challenging that. And in fact, I sent a letter to DCAM on February 11th stating this: on December 24th, 2015, I forwarded a request to suspend all activity regarding the relocation of the correctional center, the jail, until such time as pending litigation was resolved in Hampden County Superior Court. I have not received a response from your office. Now, this is the good part. Please be advised that my administration as sheriff of Hampden County, should I be elected, will not utilize Mill Street as a correctional center for any purpose. So they're going to pay this developer $1,200,000 a year, every year, with escalators for the next 10 years. And come January, should I win, it will not be a correctional center. There will be no inmates there, and there'll be no staff there. The barbed wire probably will still be there, but we won't be there should I be elected. So if the DCAM wants to move ahead with this lease, good luck. My next move is now with the governor of the Commonwealth, Charlie Baker. I'm going to tell him that this is a bad move. Why you would allow a lame duck administration, the sheriff's administration, for locating this on Mill Street, which will be there for the next 50 years if this goes through, is beyond me. Lame duck administrations should not be making proposals that will impact neighborhoods for the next 50 years. So I put DCAM on notice. If they want to move ahead with this lease, which is millions and millions of dollars with the escalator clauses and the 10-year length of term, good luck. Good luck. Okay. So everyone says, well, What is your plan? What is your plan for this center? First of all, rather than retrofit and lease an existing building for alcohol treatment only for those serving sentences, the state, this is my plan, should build new on the site of the Hampden County House of Correction and expand all services to those in need. By all services, I mean not only those who are suffering from alcohol addiction, but let's make a 250 bed complex, which will service those who are suffering from opioid addiction. You don't have to be sentenced to utilize it. Let's work with the hospitals, with the healthcare providers, and put together a collaborative effort that would make sense. And you know, everyone's been talking about treatment on demand for, well, I'd say going back to the 1970s. But yet we still don't have enough beds and facilities for people who want treatment to get treatment. So instead of investing on Mill Street, we should be building a state-of-the-art complex to handle those who have addictions, for detoxification, for substance abuse counseling, getting them prepared to go back into the community with follow-up services, job development. And you shouldn't have to be committed to a correctional center to get treatment. Sheriff Cousins is doing this in Essex County. He's got space there, and we're going to be showing you his program in the next few days, where those who need help are getting help. Exactly what I just proposed that we can do here in Hampden County. This is the new wave of what we need, of treatment of what we need, especially in Hampden County, where we're losing people virtually every day. By the way, 4 people a day are dying in Massachusetts because of this opioid crisis. 4 people every single day, and that number is going up. There has been no slowdown whatsoever, and yet we still don't have an action plan. So I want to build that complex. That is my proposal. Build it in Ludlow, work with the community, the resources that we have, work with the legislature and the governor to get the funding so we have actual treatment on demand for those who want it and those who need it. So I hope I have presented my proposal, because this is the only way we're going to be able to do it. And we're going to continue these discussions. And those of you who have issues and questions, I think we do have one question here, which of course I can't see without my glasses, but I will. Let's see. I was told that, okay, now this gets back, Jeannie from Chicopee writes in, I was told there were meetings for the neighborhood to discuss the impact and to listen to the neighbors' concerns. How many meetings? What was the notification process? How was the building marketed? Was it for sale? And it goes on. And that's a great question. And I think I touched upon it, because this whole process on Mill Street started back in 2014. It was pretty much a done deal. By the way, the request for proposal said that any facility relative to the relocation of Howard Street had to be 1/3 of a mile from 91. 1/3 of a mile. Now, why they put that proposal in there, that provision in there? I'll tell you why. Because there's very few buildings that qualify. And Mill Street made it pretty easy for the developer to submit based on that criteria for the request for proposals. Interesting. Another thing that the mainstream media won't cover. I brought it to the attention of the Inspector General, who thought that there were some issues with that whole provision. So relative to neighborhood meetings, how about that? Neighborhood meeting after the lease has been signed. Where have you seen that lately? It's no wonder the neighborhood is up in arms, and they should be, because it's going to transform their neighborhood forever. And I'm a little disappointed with the Springfield City Council has taken a position in a public policy resolve that they welcome the correctional center, the jail, to Springfield. I would hope that each and every city councilor who voted on that public policy resolve would state where they would want it, especially the ward councilors, 8 ward councilors. They should say to each of their residents that if it comes into their particular ward, where it's going to go. We haven't seen that. So there's a general consensus that this is good for Springfield. I disagree. But the counselors should indicate individually where they would like to have it in their particular ward, and the at-large counselors as well. So I'm hopeful that this message gets out. We have another question here. Why can't this correctional center just stay in Holyoke? Holyoke seems to want this jail at the temporary location. Well, here's the other thing, because I don't believe that, I believe that only the legislature and the governor can cite a correctional facility. That is, if you look back at the precedent in the past, it has been the legislature and the governor. No sheriff has the right to place a correctional center anywhere he wants to. So I don't, even though Holyoke seems to want it, the mayor and the city council president, and generally the council, I think it has to be cited legally. And I don't think that is a legal cite under the law, at least as I know it. And this is the other part of this Hampden County suit that should be decided by a judge. How the Dover Act impacts a correctional center, because it's not a group home, it's a correctional center, and who can actually cite a correctional center. So those are the questions that we have received. If anyone else has a question, please feel free to let us know. We're going to take this battle on. We're going to fight it in the court, and I'm confident that at the end of the day that this facility will not be located on Mill Street. Again, my position is it should be in Ludlow. It should be expanded to include services for even those who are not incarcerated or not been committed. We've got to do something about this crisis. I think this is a good plan. It's a worthy plan, and it's worthy for you to hear about it. And if the mainstream media doesn't want to broadcast it for whatever reason, and we'll get into that in the weeks ahead, then we're going to do it this way. But you should know that there's an alternative plan. This is not a done deal, and that by working together, we can do what's right for Hampden County. All right. So this is Mike Albano. I'm delighted that you could join me this morning. Look forward to doing these Google Hangouts in the future on a whole variety and assortment of issues that impact you, the citizens of Hampden County. Thank you very much. You have a great weekend. Stay warm. It's going to be cold out there.